Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
The average American does not get adequate sleep each and every single night. Most people should be getting somewhere around 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And we understand that this is something that many Americans just, no matter how hard they try, they just cannot achieve this. And this can affect so many aspects of your health, because if you're not getting adequate sleep, this can create problems with your blood sugar. This can create problems with your metabolic rate, with your blood pressure. We also know that certain medications and certain health conditions can make sleeping worse. So your sleep quality can be impacted by other factors. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. You need to get the sleep, and sometimes you're taking a medication which disrupts sleep and then makes your condition even worse. So this is why I want to talk about sleep today, but in the setting of sleep apnea, because many times people don't recognize how common sleep apnea is, and it's often overlooked because many people go undiagnosed because they never go in and have a sleep study done at a sleep center, for example. But you probably know someone who has been prescribed a CPAP machine, and we know that the CPAP machines are utilized as kind of the primary treatment for sleep apnea. And what CPAP stands for is a continuous positive airway pressure. So it's helping to force the air in. And so I'm going to talk about the different types of sleep apnea and then different nutrients that may be beneficial. But if you do think that you have a problem with your sleep, it's always good to speak with your doctor and maybe request going in and having a sleep study done. It can tell you so much about the quality of sleep that you're getting, and obviously if it requires something such as a CPAP machine. So I'm Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about why it is that close to 10% of Americans have sleep apnea. And obstructive sleep apnea in particular is the most common type. And when we look at the different types of symptoms that people can have, maybe you feel tired all the time during the day. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you have a headache. Maybe you feel irritable. These are oftentimes indications that perhaps you have sleep apnea. It might not be that you're snoring and people say, oh yeah, you were, sawing logs last night. That may not be the case. There are other indications that show that you may have disrupted sleep, and you need to be cognizant of this. Because we know that sleep apnea, for as common as it is certainly associated with an increased risk for other health conditions. When we look at high blood pressure, when we look at cardiovascular disease, when we look at type 2 diabetes, cognitive dysfunction, autoimmune issues. We know that certain things can make you more prone to sleep apnea. Being overweight, usually more common in men than women. But if you have, seasonal allergies, if you have just allergies in general year round, the older we get, the more prone we can be to developing sleep apnea. And so one of the biggest signs is, if someone's snoring or they're gasping or choking while they're sleeping. This is usually a key one. But remember, there are other indicators. I said feeling tired all the time during the day. Maybe you have a really dry mouth or a sore throat when you wake up in the morning. Maybe you have a hard time focusing during the day, having a hard time just doing basic tasks. I said being irritable. These are all ways for you to say, maybe I need to go and investigate this further. Now, we know that there are certain lifestyle modifications that you can do that may be beneficial, including exercise, Mediterranean diet, maintaining healthy weight, having good sleep hygiene, which means sleeping in a dark, cool environment where there's not light. So turn your television off. Don't have the blue light emitting devices next to you when you're trying to sleep. So understanding the difference between the different types of sleep apnea, this really kind of comes down to, going in and doing the sleep study itself. And understanding the anatomy of the airway and all of this is very important, because trying to get an idea as to why this actually occurs. And, the narrowing of the airway, and you have the epiglottis, and I'm not going to get too heavy into the structure function component to this, but we know that the obstructive sleep apnea is the most common, and this is usually because of those anatomical abnormalities that are occurring. And we also know that there are mixed types of sleep apnea too, where it's a central sleep apnea along with the obstructive sleep apnea. Now, the central sleep apnea, this is dealing more with the autonomic nervous system, and this usually is going to occur in infants. Or you can also see this in patients who have heart failure. There's different ways, but obstructive sleep apnea is definitely the much more common. When you're dealing with a central sleep apnea, this is maybe less than 1% of the cases. Like I said, you can always go in, have the sleep study done, and they can determine, the direct causal reason, but it is important to definitely investigate this and to regulate any chronic diseases that you have. So if you have high blood pressure, if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, because remember, the sleep apnea can put you more at risk of developing these, but also the diseases themselves can actually exacerbate sleep apnea. So it's something always to be aware of. Now, when we look at different nutrients that you can include into your routine that have been shown in clinical trials to be potentially very beneficial and helpful outside of the diet and the exercise, is looking at things such as N-acetylcysteine. NAC, we know, does so much, not only as an antioxidant to help to bolster up your glutathione levels, but when we also look at the way that it helps with the thinning of the mucosal membrane, so throughout the sinus and the respiratory tract. And this is why for many people, when they utilize NAC, they have found that can be very beneficial. Now, there was a randomized placebo-controlled trial where they gave NAC 600 milligrams 3 times a day to patients who had obstructive sleep apnea, and they did this for 30 days. And they found a significant improvement in the times throughout the night that they had these apneic episodes. So we know that the NAC is certainly doing something very beneficial. Then we can also look at vitamin C and vitamin E and coenzyme Q10. The coenzyme Q10 helping to enhance the mitochondrial energy production and may help to support and enhance respiratory function. So this is another reason why coenzyme Q10 has been looked at as being a potential place for people who have obstructive sleep apnea to turn to. And I always say, if you're doing your basics every single day, your multivitamin, coenzyme Q10, omega-3 fatty acids, maybe some additional vitamin C and vitamin E, you're going to really be well ahead of the game. But we also recognize that low vitamin D levels have been a place of interest when it comes to obstructive sleep apnea, because they have found that many people who have obstructive sleep apnea also have either insufficient or deficient vitamin D levels. So when they got their vitamin D levels back to a healthier range, they had significant improvement across the spectrum, not only when it came to the apneic episodes, but also when it came just to blood glucose levels, when it came to markers for inflammation. So all of these things are very important. We can look at B vitamins. We know that maintaining healthy homocysteine levels, so we're not having vascular inflammation, may also be a place to turn to when it comes to optimizing the way that your respiration is occurring. And then we can always look at that gut-brain connection as well, and making sure that we are maintaining a healthy microbiome. All of these things have been shown in clinical trials to be places to turn to. I always say it's always better to be proactive than reactive. Well, in the setting of obstructive sleep apnea, we clearly already have a condition that's occurring, but this is one of those perfect areas where we can try to enhance the body's normal function by supplementing with these key nutrients. So N-acetylcysteine, roughly around 1,800 milligrams per day, omega-3 fatty acids, so your fish oil or your krill oil, to really ease inflammation throughout the airways, B vitamins, so even if you're doing the methyl B or just taking a basic multivitamin every single day. So the core multivitamin or the men's multi or the women's multi, very good options. And then, of course, not overlooking the role, once again, that vitamin D could be playing in the progression of the sleep apnea. So we know it's very common. Estimated 10% of Americans are dealing with this. Many people go around and have no idea that they even have sleep apnea because, like I said, maybe you're not snoring, but it doesn't mean that you're not having these episodes throughout the night. So if you do think that this might be you, definitely make sure you make an appointment with your doctor, go in, have that sleep study done, find out if you are a candidate for doing a CPAP machine, because you don't want to go around with brain fog and feeling irritable and just feeling like you just can't focus, when there are ways that you can really make some changes when it comes to your diet, your exercise, and supplementation to get you feeling much, much better. So that's a little highlight on sleep apnea. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.